Hey y'all, insight number 2 here. We're in the book of Enos. The first part of it I covered in insight number 1. So you want to check that out? Go ahead. That will be either before this or on yesterday's stuff, or you can find it on my profile, depending on what platform you're watching on. But you guys are all smart, you can find it. Anyway, so this is verses 9 through 27. I'm talking about how your influence for good can really have a big impact out there. There's so much you can actually do, and you think, have I? And you actually have, and it can be as small as talking with someone regularly, or just noticing that somebody exists on a day. Your influence for good is actually huge. But anyway, so back in 1 to 4 of Enos, we can see Jacob's influence for good in his son Enos's words. So remember, Enos is Jacob's son, who now has these small plates of Nephi that he's just recording some in. So this is Lehi's grandson, although quite the gap in ages, so interesting. And we don't know how old he is here, but it's about 420 BC. And remember that Lehi left around 600 BC. So it's 180 years, which is a lot for just... But remember also, Jacob was like really young when Lehi was probably like 80, so makes a bit more sense there. And maybe the case of Jacob have Enos in the same situation, we don't know. But nonetheless, Enos, Lehi's grandson. Nephi's his uncle, Jacob's his dad. He's got a lot of powerful influence in his family. But you can see what is said there in verses 1 and 2 about how he remembers his dad talking about all these gospel things. And it's influenced Enos for good to go and pray. So then we read Enos' exchange with the Lord asking for good influence for his people, and then the Lamanites. And you'll see that in 9, it says, "It came to pass when I heard these words, I began to feel a desire for the welfare of my brethren, the Nephites. Wherefore I did pour out my whole soul unto God for them." So are you praying for others? Probably. But you probably don't think of praying for your enemy. But then in 11... like 10 is the answer for him, and yes, I'll support your people, and yes of this, and there's they're not being great, but I know you can go and do some stuff to help them. And 11, it says, "And after Enos had heard these words, my faith began to be unshaken in the Lord." There's that word again, unshaken. And again, you see influence, because this is exactly how Jacob described it. He's had an influence on his son, using the same words, and having that same desire to be that way. So then I prayed unto him with many long strugglings for my brethren, the Lamanites. So now he's praying for his enemy. Enemy in the fact that he recognizes too that they're misled and they need help, but he doesn't hate them. Not enemy as in he's hating them, it's just that they keep attacking them, and he's like, please don't. You just leave us alone. Go do your thing, but stop attacking us. But never mind. And 12 it says, "And it came to pass that after I had prayed and laboured with all diligence, the Lord said unto me, I will grant unto thee according to thy desires because of thy faith." And then in 13 it says what he desired of them. So he desired that the Nephites should not fall into, if they fall into transgression, that they should not be destroyed. Now that was kept right until the end, when so the Lord kept his promise with Enos in his lifetime. But we see that it changes later. And that he was praying too for to preserve the records, and he said in 16, "And I had faith, and I did cry unto God that he would preserve the records, and he covenanted with me that he would bring them forth unto the Lamanites in his own due time, that these records would be safe." That even if at some point the Nephite people were so wicked that you had to destroy them for their own good, which sometimes happens, and let's not be that people, but that actually their record and the story, because it's so powerful and so good and need to be, will come unto the Lamanites, that they can be persuaded, that actually Nephi wasn't terrible, and that what Laman and Lemuel told them about and got handed down, and the falsehoods and the ickies that got spread, because we know Laman and Lemuel didn't like Nephi, but didn't necessarily want to do all the things that are now happening. They weren't that either. We read it back in Jacob, remember last week, about how the Lamanites were actually loving to their wives, and their wives loved their husbands. And it seems in this generation, in Enos' time, it had progressed to where they were ferocious, blood-drinking, animal skin, loincloth wearing only people, that they'd shave their heads and paint. They had become almost feral. And it's like they're not ready for this record yet, but one day they will be. And we see that. And so it says in 17, I, Enos, knew it would be according to the covenant which he had made, wherefore my soul did rest. So he rested in this in his own timeline. And it says there, and that the Lord will bring forth in his own due time. So I've got this covenant from the Lord. I know he's going to do it in his time. Not mine, his. And that's something we can really learn from, myself especially, because I want things done and I kind of want them now, and it's like, well, no, not yet. And I worry about it. I worry terribly about it. Actually, no, the Lord's got you. He said he will always have you and you'll be fine. It'll be better for you if you continue to do things. I'm like, well, I want to do those things. I want to keep reading scriptures, and I want to keep going to the temple, and I want to hold all, church and all that. And I want to do that. But where's my assurances? And it's like, you just have to trust God in his timeline. Don't demand yours. And it's so hard sometimes, right? But there's the answer. So anyway, 19, he goes forth, he does all these things, he teaches all the stuff to the Nephites, and teaches them how to, again, come on, let's garden, let's raise flocks, let's get all these things going, let's work hard. And they had many prophets, he says in 22 at the end of it, and the people were stiff-necked people, hard to understand. So they were hard to persuade, they were hard to convince, they were hard to do that, but they kept going. And there was preachings and prophesying of wars from the prophets that were with them, and there was wars between the Nephites and the Lamanites, but he tried, he did everything he could, and actually he had a really good sphere of influence on his son Jarom, who we get to read about next, and that continues on. So there's a lot you can do, and he doesn't say that everyone was like that, he just said that a lot of them were like that, and that generally the people, they were like that, but he did a lot of good. So, knowing how good he felt, in the moment Enos desired to spread this joy, and in verse 19 onwards, he does all he can. And that's what we can do. You cannot change someone else's mind if they don't want to believe you. But you can live in a way that shows them how good it is, that gives them hope, that brings that into their lives as well. You have a great sphere of influence. And you can influence 2 people out of thousands, and it's worth it. So don't give up on that. Now, verse 26 to 27. That's here. How can we have influence for good in our own sphere of existence? How can we do that? So many different things we can do. So keep that in mind. Bring that into your life. What can you do today to influence for good someone else? Tell them how awesome they are. Tell them how lovely they are. Mean it. And I really appreciate it. Remember to say thank you and do it with kindness. Remember to say, oh, I'm sorry you can't help me. I know I understand that, but I'll do it. It's just a small thing. And your sphere of influence will make a huge difference to everyone around you. So keep that in mind. Now, 26 to 27 is his farewell. Enos declares he did all he could do within his influence and his joy in Christ. He went from save me in verse 4 to great joy in meeting Christ in verse 27. So where are you at on this journey, and is it a one-way path? And I'm like, no. So let's quickly read it. It says, and I saw that I must soon go down to my grave, having been wrought upon by the power of God, that I must preach and prophesy unto this people, and declare the word according to the truth which is in Christ. And I have declared it in all my days, and I have rejoiced in it above that of the world. And soon I go to the place of my rest, which is with my Redeemer. For I know that in him I shall rest, and I rejoice in the day when my mortal shall put on my immortality, and I shall stand before him. Then shall I see his face with pleasure, and he will say unto me, come unto me, ye blessed. There is a place prepared for you in the mansions of my Father. So he still hasn't seen Christ face to face. And I was like, that's what I want too. I haven't seen Christ face to face. I've seen Christ's influence, and I know for sure he's real, but I haven't stood face to face with him, and I desire that, and I like that. I've got written in my scriptures in verse 26, 27, I want this also. That's what I'm after. So where are you on this journey? And is it a one-way path? Do you start it in verse 4 going, save me, and then just spend the rest of your days going until the end of it going, yep, I'm ready to meet you now? No. There are many save me moments in that pathway, and it will fluctuate. It's not a beginning end pathway. This is a pathway that loops back on itself and around as you climb up a mountain. And we've talked about this. As you go around, you will come back to those save me moments but they're not going to be as tragic as the first ones where you plead because now you know Christ better and they're going to get better. So it's not a one-way thing. It is cyclical in nature, and it is helically inclined. It's going to go up. It's going to do that. And as you climb that path, and it is uphill, as we've been told many times, there are going to be moments of save me. And then there are going to be moments of I'm ready to meet Christ. And then there's going to be more moments of I don't know if I'm too ready and I need some more saving. It is going to constantly fluctuate. So don't beat yourself up about that. It is not a one-way path. It's a journey of it. And the path will loop back and go around. It's not a straight. So keep that in mind. But your influence for good. See what they could do here and what can be done. And we'll read more about that in Jerem coming up. So hang around. I'll see you there.